So I'd like to say thank you, Joe, for meeting us here at the Schiphol Airport. I'm sure it's not your first meeting in the airport before. And the reason that we're meeting today is because you are a jury member of the architectonic competition Blueprints for Paradise. And this competition is about future visions of built environment in Africa. Africa is changing, and you're very much engaged with the dynamics of this change happening on the continent. For some of the participants who would like to contribute their ideas towards it, how would you advise them that they could start with their entries and their ideas?
I would say that my advice would be for them to really look at the alternative views of Africa rather than the expected and what we kind of see in the media, because actually most of Africa is not documented, and I think for the participants I would encourage them to dig a bit deeper and develop a narrative which is of Africa but also of themselves. They have to kind of put themselves in a position in that context for the best results, I think. Let me tell you, it's going to be very, very difficult for people who have not been to Africa, but I think this is a wonderful opportunity for people to explore themselves based on their understanding of what they think Africa is.
So this competition is very much related to the aspirations of Africa and also perhaps the personal aspirations for Africa by the entries. What do you think is one of the biggest challenges for the continent?
Talking about aspirations, the danger would be to assume that the aspirations are Western biased. The difficulty is for the participants to really shed their prejudices about Africa and try to understand the Africa that Africans live. Now that's going to be very, very hard, but I think it can be done. There have been great kind of narratives already established throughout the history of Africa by non-Africans. And so that's a kind of spirit that I hope these participants will become the new storytellers of the 21st century and not rehash the Africa of the 18th and then the 19th century.
Do you think that the future lies with breaking from the past or building on it?
It's a combination of both. You have to build on it and then modify the past. I think we cannot reject what we've experienced, or we can certainly reject what the mistakes of the West are in all this. So it's just that fine balance. I always tell people it's not about the perfection of the African space, but the harmony created by the African space, and that's what we are trying to achieve. So harmony implies not so good, and then, you know, the best.
So Joe, you have been a juror in different architectural competitions before. How do you feel that this competition would differ, for example, from the wholesome architectural competition?
I would hope that in this case the product is not overly architectonic. By that I mean using the kind of staple kind of panoply of ideas that we're used to in architectural training, but rather I hope there'll be a cultural bias to all this, and a literature bias, and also a music bias. What I'm saying is that I hope other creative impulses will generate the response.
So you recently gave a lecture in the Amsterdam Architecture Academy about craftsmanship, the craftsmanship of the architect. Will you be looking to the use of materials as an important factor within people's suggestions and ideas?
Absolutely, I think, but the material, it's not only about the physical, but I think the inspiration also. Now you should remember that the description of African space, it's not only the built form, but it's about the history that created this form. So, for example, even in terms of ethnicity, public spaces or African spaces in the southern part of Ghana, where I'm from, is very different from the northern part of Ghana, only because the people of the north have a different identity and also therefore a different cultural narrative. So I think the storytelling part, which is not literally the storytelling, but the influences, it could be climate, you know, it could be linguistic, and of course the physical landscape is also important. So I think it's how we reinterpret what materials mean will be the challenge, because I don't think we can interpret it in the same way as we do in the West. Or I think this competition, as I understood it, is for us to create a new language in describing what an African space could be, not what it is. That this is, as defined by existing writings and so forth. Yeah.
Could we ask you to share with us some of the buildings that have most excited you, or projects that have most excited you in the last few years on the continent?
Yes, I must say that not necessarily projects, but I think I'm more excited about the attitude towards the younger generation to explore what is Africanness. And most of these projects which I've seen and heard young people talk about have not been built yet. But to me, in my mind, they've been built because I see the drive of this young generation who've been exposed to both the West and kind of local impulses. And I think I'm very excited about what they're going to be creating. I'm not really concerned about the physical. It's about the narrative. I keep going back to that, yes.
Would you care to share with us how you envisage that the outcome of this competition could have an impact on the African continent?
First of all, I would hope that African participants would be of a significant number. I hope a lot of Africans will participate. And more importantly, I would hope that they have collaborated with their with others in the West. I think it is that hybrid of ideas that I'm looking to actually see. I'm hoping that this will lead to long-term relationships of people. It's about bringing people together, and this is the best platform for this kind of thing.
And to make this competition equal exchange on both sides, not only in Africa but on the worldwide level, do you see that this project could have a bridge between the information gap about knowledge of urbanism and architecture on the continent?
Yes, absolutely. And that would also, I think, understanding the African space and dynamic has a great impact on the future of Europe, I think also. As I touched on earlier with you, I think close analysis of what us people see with the predicament of Africa is the lack of certain structures which I think the West should be aware of. So by learning from what has gone wrong in Africa, and certainly what is actually the triumphs of Africa in spite of all these problems, the West can learn a lot from this. So I think this competition I see as a way for a democratic exchange of ideas, lessons learned. I'm very optimistic that Africa has a lot to contribute, and this competition will be the first of many, I hope, where great African issues are brought to the fore.